Good morning and welcome to today's webinar with Ivan Denton and Kelvin Gumbs to explore the ongoing intersection between higher education, military, and the workforce. So welcome to both of you. Let's get started with some introductions. Kelvin, do you want to kick us off?
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity, Jesse, and thanks for letting me go first. I definitely would not want to follow Ivan Denton's introduction, given all of his experience and everything. But I am really thrilled to be on the conversation with my good friend, Ivan. But I'm Kelvin Gumbs. I'm executive director at Purdue University. I've been in this role for about, almost 4 years. My focus is purely on military educational and strategic partnerships, connecting Purdue as an entity to more partnership opportunities that really allow us to intentionally serve the military affiliated communities. So this work is very much mission and passion, getting to advance Purdue's kind of a role as a leading institution. Prior to this, I was in the Navy for 22 years and 4 months and a few days. It was a great experience, and my career was no more exciting or different than anyone's. One of the things that really sticks out to me about my time in uniform was navigating the world of my military experience, my military training, and its connectedness to academic opportunities and subsequent outcomes. So have lived it. I now live it in this new chapter of life, and I'm excited to be in the conversation. With that, let me kick it over to Ivan.
You're too kind, Kelvin, and I appreciate it. And Jesse and Karen certainly appreciate the invite. Anytime I can speak about those getting out of the military or veterans in the workforce, I jump at it. So just, Kelvin, I want to thank you also for introducing us. My name's Ivan Denton. I've been at DLL Vets now for 9 years. For most of those 9 years, I've been focused on the transition assistance program, specifically employment, making sure that those that get out have the best opportunity possible to get the best job possible. Prior to the 9 years working here, I served in the Army National Guard for 34 years. Last assignment was in the Pentagon, where I really got to see kind of the entire ecosystem operate, and was also involved in the transition program from 2014 to 2016 by standing up a program called SkillBridge, which is extremely popular now with employers. I would just kind of end my introduction with saying, in the 9 years I've been here, we tried to do something close to SkillBridge. We developed the Employment Navigator Partnership Program, which we're going to place 10,000 separating service members this year. So when you collectively look at SkillBridge and the Employment Navigator Partnership Program, we're going to place over 34,000 separating service members into gainful employment this year. I'm very proud to have played a part in both those programs, and looking forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you, guys. And we're so happy to have you here today. I'll do a quick intro. Dr. Karen Ferguson. I really look at PLA through a couple of different lenses, or CPL, depending on what we're going to call it today. As a person who received it while I was on active duty, so that I could finish my bachelor's degree, the credit for prior learning process, in my opinion, completely changed my personal trajectory. I don't think I would be where I am today had I not found a university willing to bring in all of my transfer credits from all of the different bases, along with my military training, and really taking a hard look at the experience as well. That is really what put me on the path that ended up taking me into higher education, focused on non-traditional students, focused on military students, and trying to make sure that everything that people bring to the table when they come to university is honored and respected. And I think the most thorough approach that we have to that is credit for prior learning, where we're taking a look at experience, at training, at previous college. We're really looking at the whole student, whether they're military, civilian, police, fire. All of the different agencies provide a lot of training and making sure that that gets honored as something that students bring to the institution has been a passion of mine for the last 20 years in higher education.
Well, thank you all for your service, especially after this Memorial Day weekend. We honor that. As we think about this kind of critical intersection that affects millions of Americans, this overlap between military service, workforce development, and education, it's really important, I think, that we don't see them as separate systems. They're really a Venn diagram where the overlaps are inseparable. And it's essential to both our economic and our national security. So one of the things that I'd be really curious about is each of your perspectives in these different segments of this ecosystem because of your deep background, and arguably all three for very different reasons. But I wanted to start with you, Ivan, around the notion of military friendly versus military ready and why that distinction matters. I think you've done a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, let me approach that, and thank you, because you took those terms, I think, from our last call. I'm created that term primarily to describe employers, whereas every employer says they want to hire veterans. So I would call that being military friendly, but very few have taken the time to make sure their HR mechanisms and ecosystem is really tuned into what's that separating service member or veteran bring to the plate. Are we able to take their resume, kind of make some translations that maybe a military friendly entity couldn't? So that's where I kind of bring the distinction of military ready, which is they have a higher than 5% of veterans working for them. They've done some things in the HR arena with the hiring managers to separate themselves from the previous. So that's kind of what I mean. Now, I think what I've enjoyed getting to know Karen is that same term might be used with universities on the CPL, which thank you, Karen, for another acronym I can put in the bank now for credit prior learning. I think the same could be said, and what I would tell employers and universities, and Kelvin is a perfect example of this. When you look at the amount of money that we spend on training and developing our service members while they're serving, it's kind of off the charts. It's really unheard of, quite frankly. And trying to give somebody credit for that is very, very difficult. And we often don't do it well. So I appreciate, Jesse, you bringing this up, having a tutorial, whatever you're going to call your vignette, I guess. And I'm just glad to be a part of it. So I'll stop rambling, but hopefully that at least gives us a good start point.
You think, Ivan, that it's really a translation problem, that there's two different languages being spoken between the language in the military, the nomenclature that's used in what makes an individual successful or be able to progress in the military, between this HR civilian language? Or is it that we are not focused enough on the recognition of the amount of leadership or adaptability or focus that arguably companies really are looking for? Where do you think that is it? Is it just purely that they just don't have the on-ramp for military, or is there actually like a progression that can happen to help a company kind of re-envision what that could look like?
I think it's I'm going to put the onus primarily on us kind of in the military. For example, when I got out, I didn't download my VMET, which I think stands for Verification of Military Education and Training, which would have been multi-pages long. It's actually a DD form. It would have shown an employer all the training and development that I would have had over a 34-year career, which, like I said, would have been multi-pages to include running a talent management activity for a 350,000 member Army National Guard to include a 12,000 Army. I mean, you just name it. And it's like I couldn't perfectly explain that to an employer, but there's some things I've learned over the last 9 years that we probably aren't doing real well. I think we've got to do a better job in the military of helping folks transition, and we're doing that. But I also think that employers and universities need to understand the secret sauce, which is the taxpayer dollars that have gone into this training development should be leveraged to the maximum hilt to support those getting out as well.
Hey, Kelvin, this has always been one of your big mantras, right?
Yeah, no, really glad that we're starting off this way, talking about military friendly versus military ready. It's interesting, right? And I agree with everything that Ivan shared from an educational standpoint. Just for a little bit of context, from Purdue's standpoint, serving the military has been part of our legacy, our history since the beginning. As all of you know, Purdue's a land-grant institution. The Morrill Act, Indiana got in on the deal, so to speak, in 1865. In 1871, we broke ground on the campus, which included a military hall. We started teaching classes in 1874 with 6 instructors, 39 students, and we could argue that our commitment to serving the military has started since then. So we've been doing this a long time, but guess what? To Ivan's point, we're still figuring it out. We're still trying to lean into the concept of prior learning recognition every day. And we do that because we have built teams that do this for a living every day. But what we're learning is military training is evolving. It's being modernized. They're teaching things in different ways. Do we as institutions have the infrastructure in place to ensure that we're keeping pace and that our articulation experts and our faculty are able to ensure that we're doing that in a way that always benefits a service member, not just to help them advance in their military careers because they're getting training, they're earning degrees, but we're in the business of graduates. When I look at a potential person that we're going to serve, we start with graduation and then we work our way back to ensure that we're doing everything we can to get them there. And then the other piece of this is, how does that military experience, their training, this degree that they've earned with us or whoever else, prepare them to go contribute meaningfully when they separate or retire, right? So we're learning every day. And, the other piece of this is, as institutions like Purdue expand, we have traditional learners on campus, people that separate from the military, come to campus, or using their GI Bill. Then we have people that we serve in online modalities at Purdue Global and Purdue Online. And all of those entities are looking at prior learning and recognizing that learning a little differently, especially if it's at the undergraduate level, is it at the graduate level? So we're always adapting and we're always learning and we're taking best practices from within the system to ensure that the service member is always advantaged. But I guess the other thing I would say is the friendliness. Yes, we see you, service member. We want to serve you. A lot of universities can say they do that. The ready piece is, are we paying attention to the changes? Are we intentionally in conversations with our military partners to fully understand how to best serve them, and thus making us ready, truly ready to serve that military, learner that may come to us with years of experience and training. And we're going to try and articulate that into credit, not to make the academic journey necessarily easier, because we still have to teach and we're still committed to rigor, but to not make them do stuff, for lack of better terms, that they've done before, and help them move that finish line closer intentionally. Let me pause there for any reactions, perhaps Karen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask both of you, because as you both were talking, one of the things, and I think Ivan, this came up in a previous conversation. I think one of the challenges that the civilian sector has, whether it's universities or employers, is what's their exposure to the military? Is it what they've seen on TV? Is it that their nephew served? Right. And there's almost this like, okay, so if you're in the Air Force, you're clearly a pilot. If you're in the Army, you're an infantryman. Right. And if you're in the Navy, you're on a ship somewhere. But people don't, I think, necessarily realize that the military, regardless of the branch, is basically its own ecosystem, right? It's a different section of society, but it has everything that society has, right? We've got restaurants, we have hospitals, we have construction engineers building roads and building buildings. All of the different components that go into any city, it really exists within a military base and the military service members that serve that base. Do you guys think that the lack of awareness of just all of the variations of how people serve in the services impacts how they think about how somebody might be prepared for college or they might be prepared for the workforce?
Kelvin, why don't you go ahead and kick this one off, because you've got a very unique piece that you did with the Navy that I think trying to explain that to a civilian, I can't wait to hear. And then I'll give my spiel as an infantryman.
You bet. Thanks for that question, Karen. It is interesting, right? I think a lot of institutions may look at a service member and say, well, they were in the Navy, so they may have basic seamanship skills, maybe some firefighting. So the natural inclination may be to give them some general ed credit, suffice their physical education credit requirement, and off they go. And to your point, so in the Navy, we do have people that are very well trained in basic seamanship and navigation. Every sailor is a firefighter, but some sailors have more firefighting training than others. Some sailors have the prestige honor of serving on board submarines, and they are trained in, nuclear engineering and a number of other things to make those engineering marvels run. And then you have Seabees and construction men that have been trained deeply in civil engineering. So the list goes on and on and on. And I think it goes back to the beginning, back to, how Jesse kicked us off, to be friendly versus ready. And I think to be ready is you have to be intentional and do the work to understand the persona. Because yes, you may think immediately the Air Force is all pilots, but they also have world-class security forces and incredible maintainers for all the aviation assets, and the list goes on. So for us, from an academic institution, it's fully understanding that every person that may come to us because they Google us and they say, okay, Purdue or Purdue Global is the right fit for me. We have to go that extra mile to ensure we understand the person that has come to us. How have they been trained? What is their background? Did they have industry training before joining the military? And looking at that whole person concept to ensure that we are honoring their experience and their training. So that's that. And again, also, it's not just those people earning those undergraduate degrees. It's the people that are now coming back for graduate level education. Have they done something in their respective service? For example, we have a very, very amazing partnership. We have a lot of amazing partnerships, but one very unique one with a particular test pilot entity in the military. They're training the best of the best, and they are earning world-class training and experiential learning that we have had to figure out how to ensure that that has a place in terms of non-credit to credit pathways. So yes, it's easy to look at the service member and say, yep, they're a sailor, they have these basic skills, and this is it. When in reality, you have to dig deeper and have a full understanding to ensure that you're not disadvantaging them because we have not taken that intentional approach to fully understand them. I'll kick it over to Ivan. And if I missed anything, Ivan, just let me know and I'll jump back in.
No, hey, Kelvin, I appreciate that because, I always I have so much love and appreciation for somebody that would be so crazy as to go down in a sub, So uh, as for me, I'd rather jump out of a perfectly good airplane. But so, I grew up as an infantryman learning how to basically go and try to fight and win a war from literally the fire team level all the way up to um, corps level, which is, kind of the 3-star level fight. And I always tell folks that want to listen, when you take an infantryman, when you just look at what a squad leader in charge of 11 people has to do to be able to train their individuals in different conditions, navigate those individuals all digitally, communications now all digital, and then take a look at a company commander, battalion commander, brigade commander, which, I always say I don't know what the military spent on me to get me ready to take a battalion into Iraq in 2003. But to get that battalion and all of its systems ready to fight stateside, move it to Kuwait, deploy it into Iraq, reverse engineer that back to Kuwait, back home without loss of life, and we did lose 2, was nothing short of miraculous. And then as brigade commander, I did it with a couple thousand folks with 0 loss of life, which is just kind of amazing. So when you really start to put that into perspective, literally it's not just but the management of all these systems, especially for officers and senior NCOs, it is off the charts. And how do you put a price tag on that? And how do you, explaining it can be exhausting, just as I'm probably exhausting you guys a little bit, but it's not just what they teach us to do. It's then we have to do it in very dangerous environments where literally somebody is trying to hurt or kill you. Is very difficult to do. That's why, trust me, I'm not blaming employers or universities for this, because this is, and Kelvin, I appreciate you saying this. You're still trying to figure it out. Just as I do feel like that since the all volunteer force started in the 70s, and that's why that's why I want us to be a little bit friendly with each other, because really the training and development really went off the charts when we went to the all volunteer force and stopped the draft in the early 70s. That hasn't been that long ago, 50 some years ago. So things were much different in a draft era versus a all volunteer force era. I think that's what's made this so much more difficult for us as a nation to be able to kind of do it on both ends, both the supply and demand. So I know I said a lot there, Karen. You can probably bring us back to reality.
No, I think that was great. I was actually, when you were talking, picturing, picking up a city and moving it. We said that's essentially what happens on those large scale deployments. And keeping everybody safe through that requires your leadership, your management, and then that of everyone else involved. And I think you use the term squad leader, and it makes me think about, how do you explain a squad leader to, someone who's transferring credit, that's never been in the service? I mean, is it that they're in the civilian world a first line supervisor, and the platoon leader is then, the manager, and then the lieutenant is the divisional lead? As you think about that from a leadership standpoint, there might be something that we can do to break it down, to make it, it is not necessarily fair when you break it down like that, right? Because there's a lot more to it. But I'm wondering if there's a way we can just really simplify understanding how would this apply in a city, or how would this apply in a large organization, and trying to translate that over so people could just have a simple understanding of what goes into it. But thank you for your example. I thought it was fantastic.
Just as a quick reaction, as Ivan was kind of explaining his journey and some of those experiences, you'd like to think that kind of experience is like a baptism in project management beyond, earning a PMP or something, right? You'd like to figure out what is the secret sauce to translate that entire journey into saying, okay, like this is project management on another level. And I think about my own career growing up, from E1 to retiring as a chief warrant officer, as Ivan was talking and reflecting on the training that I did as a young, yeoman administrator, all the way to going to career school, spending time supporting combatant commanders, getting selected as a chief warrant officer, going to an aviation squadron. Karen, to your points, like moving a squadron from, Lemoore, California to Fallon, Nevada for detachments that, increase our readiness and lethality, and then taking all that and moving it onto a ship so we can go out and do the projecting of power. Like there's a tremendous amount of experience. And for me, and I think this is emblematic of a lot of people going back to education, when I went and got my associates, I was already a CWO. So there's this entire body of training, transcripts from Lord knows how many community colleges, all this experience. And then, so I earned an associate's and I was like, wow, okay, why didn't I do that 12 years ago? That wasn't so bad. And then you earn the bachelor's and then you start getting kind of a little addicted to education. Here I am trying to earn a doctorate so I can be like you, Dr. Ferguson. And it's a journey we're all on, right? And the journey calls for additional training, additional education, because by the way, and Ivan can attest to this, these days, it's not just about degrees. There is just-in-time learning that you need to upskill or reskill in a world where emerging tech is getting a major say. What are institutions doing to put innovative credentialing in the hands of those service members that may be separating? They may be an infantryman today, but tomorrow they may go get a job at Firestone or Walmart. And guess what? These are technology companies at their foundation now, because technology is influencing everything they do. Our academic curriculum and offerings, whether credit or non-credit, preparing the service member for a completely different world now. And Ivan, I know you all spend a lot of time thinking about that.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you brought it up. I would say that for the combat arms, especially, I got really good at project and program management at a very early age. And then as I got more senior, I became an expert in what I would probably call portfolio management, where you're literally managing several different lines of effort across time and space.